Well, good morning.
Good morning, Judy.
How are you, Susan?
I have the same flu everyone else has, so I'm part of the larger community.
You're lucky.
Thank you. What is unlucky?
Well, I just thought you're
Plague.
lucky, but most people have. You want to have it too. So I really admire people who write books. It's a very lonely pastime.
It's a very happy pastime for people who don't love being around so many people.
That's so true. So how many books have you written?
3 at the moment, and a whole lot of short stories and articles.
When did you start writing?
I started writing when I first came out to live full-time in Sag Harbor, which was in 1991. I had spent every summer of my life out here, which goes back a lot further than that. And I had been a lawyer on Wall Street and worked in credit default swaps, and it was a crazy business, and I had 2 small children that I was raising alone, and I finally just collapsed, I guess. So I came out to my childhood summer play place to relax, and I thought I'd stay here for a year and just recover. And as the days got shorter, I moved out here in September, and as things started getting dark early and the summer people went away, I asked people, what can I do? And I had written a few humorous pieces for Dan's papers, and somebody said to me, my husband is in a writer's group. You should go there. Very nice people, and you should just join them. So I did, and they were all in the middle of writing novels, and I would sit there and listen to them read the middle chapter of a novel, and I had no idea, what the story was.
Which group was that?
And it just,
Which group was that?
That was the Ashua Hall group that was led by Mary Jane Meeker. It went on for many, many years, and she was a very good person for getting people really serious about writing, which of course I wasn't. I was just going there for a little social life in the middle of the week. But then I went into the city one afternoon and had lunch with a friend of mine, an ophthalmologist, and he said, so how's it going out in Sag Harbor? And I said, well, I'm in this writing group, but I've written these humorous little articles, and all these people are writing novels. I can't write a novel. And he said, sure you can. And I said, like about what? And he said, why don't you write about me? I'm a very interesting person. So I did. I wrote this. He is an interest. He died. He was.
What's the name of that book?
The book is The Speed of Light, which is somehow traces back to his being an ophthalmologist, because the conceit of the book is that although he is an ophthalmologist, he's kind of blind to his own feelings and needs. He's a man who really cannot face the fact that he's mortal and who suffers terribly because of that.
So you
I
must
should
have...
add that when the book came out, and I was having dinner with him at the Gramercy Arts Club with another friend of mine, she said to him, so, how does it feel to be the main character in a novel? And he said, I guess it's the closest I'll ever come to immortality. So that's
So it must
when I
have taken
started.
a lot of interviews. It must have taken a lot of interviews to write this book.
No, I didn't. I knew him very well. And besides, the book is fiction. It was based on him. It was, his crazy inability to accept mortality is the theme of the book.
So how did he like it the way you saw him? You described him.
Well, it's not a flattering picture.
He didn't like it?
In fact, someone we were just talking about here a little while ago, Victor Teisch, came to the first reading, and he said, why are you so mean to this man? And I said, look, it's fiction. I'm not mean to anybody. No, he seriously was very happy to have been immortalized
And how did you find a publisher?
Oh, with great difficulty, as everybody does. Being
Yeah.
in a writing group turned out not to be any advantage at all. People there who had publishers, who had literary agents, guarded them very jealously. It
Yeah.
was a very rude awakening to the world of publishing.
Well, it's still that way. I don't know how
Oh,
long
it's
ago.
terrible. It's terrible.
It's still the same way.
That's why I won't write fiction anymore. I tried it a second time. I suffered enough, and now I write nonfiction.
Upper West Side Story.
Yes,
And what is that about?
the Upper West Side. It's about two families, one black and one white. The two mothers are best friends, and their two 13-year-old boys are prodigy chess players and are also best friends. And there is an accident that occurs when they're horsing around in school, and one of the children dies as a result. And all the politics and resentment that has been bubbling in this integrated community that is smugly very proud of itself for being so happily integrated, all that dark underbelly flares up, and there's a whole lot of political maneuvering and legal maneuvering, and
So where did you
It has a
get the
happier ending.
idea for this?
I got the idea for that because I spent a Thanksgiving dinner with my brother, who used the occasion to tell me how delighted he was that his own 13-year-old son, who attended public school in Riverdale, in
Uh-huh.
an all-white school, that the school had decided to bring 4 black children from Harlem up to be in his son's class for the year. And wasn't that a wonderful thing?
Uh-huh.
And I said, I don't think so. And his son looked at me like, what are you, a racist, you know? And I said, how would you feel if your son was one of 4 children sent down to Harlem to spend the year so that black children could get to see what a white kid is like? I said, I really think this whole business, this very forced thing, is it treats children like chattel, like objects. I mean, black mothers did not have their children so that your son could treat them as a learning experience. And we had a pretty heated debate about this, and his son was, watching back and forth, who's right here?
Who's
and what's happening. And I went home and I thought, my brother is very well-intentioned. What could go wrong?
Uh-huh.
Now, the Asheville Hall Writers Workshop with Mary Jane Meeker had instilled that question in me. Set something up and then ask what can go wrong.
Uh-huh.
And as I was falling off to sleep that night, I had this image of 2 kids playing around on the stairs in school. And one runs up behind the other, and the other hears him coming and kind of bumps back, just playfully. And the kid behind him falls down the flight of stairs, whacks his head, and later dies. And these are 2 good friends, and their parents are good friends. What happens now? And that's how the book starts.
And you just
I won't tell you
developed it.
which one dies.
No. Very interesting. Very.
Yeah, well,
And did you have the same publisher
No.
for this?
no. This one ultimately got published because a friend of mine, whom I met in the Asheville Hall Writers Workshop, knew the people who ran the permanent press out in Sag Harbor, and she invited them and me to dinner one evening. Not them, she invited friends of theirs and me to dinner. And we got to talking about the book that I was trying to sell, and these people at dinner, unbeknownst to me, went home and called up Permanent Press and said, there's a book you should probably look at. And they hadn't seen the book. They just did it on the basis of having met me. So that's how this got published at a Sag Harbor press. This one kicked around for 14 years.
Oh, my.
Well, I originally wrote it one way, and then I wrote it another way, and then I rewrote it, and I rewrote it. And in the meantime, I got a certificate in landscaping from Harvard. I got a master's in landscape art from the Inchbald School of Design in London. I wrote my doctoral dissertation in philosophy at Stony Brook, and I kept coming back and fixing it. And one year I just said, I am getting this book out of here. I'm not going to leave it in my computer and die with it that way. So I did what you have to do. I sent it out to absolutely everybody.
Oh, you did?
And every literary agent told me to do something different with it.
Of
Which
course.
shows you what they know.
Uh-huh.
And finally, Harvard Square was set up as a fiction publishing subsidiary of Harvard University Press. And as a not-for-profit, because it was Harvard University Press, they needed some kind of social purpose, and they said that, you know, they were set up to publish fiction having to do with critical social issues. And this is that. It's about children and race and
All right.
what goes on in the schools.
So, anybody else in your family is a writer?
No.
No? What about your parents? What did they do?
My father was a doctor. My mother was, not by her choosing, a housewife. My father just wouldn't let her work until one day I threw a tantrum and I said, "You've got to let her out of the cage." And the next morning, she went down to the Board of Ed and renewed her teaching license because she had a master's in European history from the University of Michigan, and she really was much happier.
Michigan, is that where you're from?
No, I'm from the northwest corner of New York City, the Bronx.
Oh, the Bronx. Not Riverdale, Bronx.
No, they moved to Riverdale after I got out of the house.
Oh, that's great. And you said you got married?
Yes,
What you said that you brought up your kids by yourself?
I did. Yes.
Well, how long have you been married?
No, I'm in a second marriage now.
No.
But I was alone for 30 years. I was single for 30 years between my marriages.
Wow, that's unusual. Like, you know, I figured,
Well, I had 2 boys, and I don't know. I mean, I've met women who had a bunch of sons and found another husband, but it must have been my sons because nobody wanted to take them on.
that usually when a person is, I'm just talking for myself, when you're single for such a long time, you know, you're not looking to.
Oh, I was always looking.
You were always looking.
Yes, and in fact, you know, along came J-Date.
Oh,
And that's what I guess I had been looking for all along.
well,
I
that's
went on
good.
J-Date, and I met my husband.
Well, that's good. And you just finished another book?
Yes, I have another book all ready to go, just needs a publisher. The happy story about this one is at least it's represented by an agent, so I don't have to go through all the heartache.
Uh-huh.
But I decided after how difficult it had been to get 2 books of fiction published that I'm now an old lady and I'm not going to fuss. I'm going to write nonfiction because nonfiction defines a particular audience for itself. So, you know, I'm writing philosophy, which has probably the smallest possible audience you can think of, but it's philosophy being brought to bear on a subject that I think a lot of people are now interested in, and that is Sabbath keeping. It seems that even Reconstructionist Jews, the most far left Jews, are very interested in the meaning of the Sabbath and what role it can play in their lives. And in this book, I use about 15 famous philosophers, one at a time, to try and apply their theories to get some deeper sense of what Sabbath keeping is about. The book is a lot of philosophy in a very, I hope, user-friendly mode, but it's interspersed with a lot of short memoirs taken from my life, raising my boys alone, and
You were talking
keeping the
about,
Sabbath at the same time.
and you were talking about movements, how it affects the body.
Not in that book, that's something else.
Oh, that's a different book.
Yes.
That one you are working on, that's not written yet?
That is my doctoral dissertation. And I was asked to rewrite it so that it could be published for general circulation.
Oh,
And that is not about the Sabbath, but it is a philosophy book. I guess I have, it starts to sound like I have a lot of spaghetti in my head and that it's all tangled up. So I have to stop here. I've just been buried at my computer trying to write the home page of a new website. And this home page is supposed to describe all of these things that I've done and show how they're interrelated. And the way they're interrelated is that everything I do is philosophy. Everything. I chose to be a philosopher at a very young age. I had to take a 10-year break and practice law because I needed to get my kids through college, and I needed that kind of money. But while I was in law school, a lot of my law classes seemed like philosophy. Once I got out into the office on Wall Street, it was anything but. But everything else I've done, whether it's social and political philosophy or a kind of metaphysical pondering of the nature of death, which is what this book does, everything I've undertaken has been a questioning of essentials. And the Sabbath book is that. It's about what is the moral value of taking a 24-hour rest every week. The 10 Commandments give us rules for morality. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. And then it says, and come to a complete rest for 24 hours once a week. And as a philosopher, I say, wait a minute. What is the moral significance of that? Why ought I to do it? Now, Orthodox Jews say, oh, you do it because God told you to do it, and you don't question it. But I'm a philosopher, and what I do for a living is question, okay? So that book is trying to answer that question.
really?
What is it that makes that rest morally important? What are you supposed to be doing on that day off that has moral significance?
And you
And I have
found
to
the
tell you,
answer?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted an answer, and I was just going to keep pressing the question till I found one. And I hope it's...
Well, for that alone, people will want to buy the book to
I
find
hope
the
so.
answer.
I hope so. Well,
So don't give it away.
no, I'm not. Now, my doctoral dissertation, which is on landscape design, is also philosophy. I guess I just have this habit of taking philosophy into areas that it hasn't been in before and using these new areas as a source of new philosophical questions. And the question that my thesis is aiming to answer is, why do we have certain emotional responses to different kinds of landscapes? Why do we feel one way in a forest and a different way in an open field? I mean, we all know that we do, but what is actually happening in our bodies that create these different emotions in different places? what I did in the dissertation is I considered all of the different arts: sculpture, architecture, painting, music, dance. And I said, how is landscape really like all of those? How do they create feeling? And how does an artist, let us say an architect, okay, use his art to create specific feelings, to manipulate our feelings? So when you are in a Gothic cathedral, you have this sense of awe and inspiration and uplift, okay? And when you're in an intimate little salon having tea, the building creates a different feeling. Well, landscape is also a form of architecture. And natural landscapes, people like to say, well, that's God's landscape. But landscape designers, and we certainly know a lot of them out here in the Hamptons, create specific emotional responses by the way they manipulate the things in the landscape.
Very
And that's what I
interesting.
looked. So everything I do is philosophy. It's the occupation everybody's mother says you'll never make a living at that. And I have never made a living at that.
Well, you're bringing up
I've taught philosophy,
a
but
lot
it's
of
not a living.
a lot of questions in people's minds. So, if you write about it, I think people would be interested
Yes, I hope they will be. I think they should
because
be.
it's a different thought. Maybe.
Well, I teach philosophy out here at Bridgehampton Library every Monday.
Oh.
And there's a small group of people who, for the past 18 years, have been coming to talk about philosophy, so somebody's interested.
Of course. Just, I guess not many people know about it.
What can I do about that? I can tell you,
Yes.
and everybody out there. The library announces it in the papers, and some weeks the paper says it's there, and some weeks the paper tells people something else.
Right.
Once people find that class, they usually stay with it. But, you know, it's over the course of all these years. There's a core group of people that love to talk about philosophy. So
When I spoke to you some time ago, we were talking about children's books, and you said that there's certain information not many people know.
Oh, I think, look, I've never written a children's book, and I've never been interested in writing a children's book. When I think about it, and I say to you, you know, everything I do is philosophy. I used to put my older son to sleep by lying down beside him in his bed, and he would say, now, Mom, tell me again, what are the proofs of the existence of God?
Oh.
And so I didn't write children's books, I did philosophy. But as far as I know, the children's book industry is very tightly regulated in that what constitutes a publishable children's book has very clear guidelines. Certain number of pages, certain amount of
So could you just tell me what
illustration.
book because we're running out of time.
I don't know a specific book, but I know that if you go to the library and you say you'd like a book on how to write children's books, I'm sure there are several there. And I seem to recall that Southampton, Stony Brook at Southampton in the summer when they do their writers programs, there's very often a course on writing children's books. And even though I know you've written one,
I wrote several.
okay, but if you want them published, I think you should sit in on a course like that so that you can make sure that you've checked all the boxes.
Well, I want to thank you for coming. It's been very interesting talking to you. And I just want to say that you could watch me on YouTube.
I know that.
Have you seen me?
I have seen you on YouTube.
Oh, interesting.
I hope
Yeah.
everybody else out there has.
Yes, and they show me 4 times here in the East End.
This program that we're doing now
Yes, yes,
will be shown 4 times.
4 times.
Over what? Over
For
a
2
month,
weeks.
or for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And after that, as I said, it's going to go on YouTube, and all my shows goes on YouTube.
Okay, well then I'll take it off YouTube, this one,
Yes.
and post it on my website.
Oh, great. Yes.
Which are-
And you told me you're going to Israel next
I go to
week
Israel every year, yes, for 6 weeks every year.
for 6 weeks. You have relations there?
No,
What, you go to Jerusalem, Tel
No.
Aviv?
I go to Tel Aviv. Excuse me. I go to Tel Aviv because it's a nice warm place with a lovely beach,
Yeah.
fabulous food, fun people, dancing on the beach every Saturday. I go to Tel Aviv because I can go to the opera, concerts, theater every night of the week. That's why I go.